Welcome to the regular meeting of the North Shore Fire Department Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, October 4th at 5 p.m. First order on our business is roll call.
Good evening, Commissioner Admin,
Present.
Commissioner Pratt will be joining, but he's not here yet. He's on the call. Commissioner Byers is not here. I don't know if he'll be attending. Commissioner Webster,
Here.
Commissioner Woolham,
Here.
Chief Cowan,
Here.
Legal Counsel Matt Paxton,
Here.
and I'm Board Secretary Amy Oakley.
Okay, next on our agenda, we have public comment. And is there anyone online or in person who wishes to make a public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to approval of the agenda. And I think we have a couple of agenda modifications. One is that we have an addition to our agenda, which is a quote from J-Mark regarding our alerting system. And I think just to be sensitive of the time of Zeb, who's going to talk with us about it, I would propose that we move that to item 4.1 at the beginning of our board discussion and possible action items. I asked Chief Cowan about 4.2 policy 6200 finance policy. He said that we're not going to discuss that this evening, so we can strike that item. And I'd suggest that we then move 4.1 policy 1400 approval to 4.2. So it'll start 4.1 J-Mark quote, 4.2 revised policy 1400, and then all else the same unless anyone else has any agenda changes. Okay. I'll move that we approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, the agenda is approved. So we'll move on to board discussion and possible action items, and we'll start off with 4.1 J-Mark quote.
Just a quick thing, and I'm going to pass it off to Zeb. I want to thank Zeb again for making sure through due diligence that we were getting an accurate proposal from J-Mark. We've now, I don't know, it's about the 14th, it seems like, but we've had at least two prior to this meeting in front of us, and after the last meeting, he started working with engineers to come up with make sure that we had the right plan in place for implementation, and found some questions, and I'll let him fill in, on that. But I really appreciate the fact that he's, keeping a good eye on what we're getting.
So in my discussions with J-Mark for the last couple of months, mostly with their sales team as to the changing of this building from one system to another, the modern system that Shoreline uses at their other locations. And when it came down to the proposal we gave you at the last commissioner meeting, which you guys approved, and I went back to them and said, okay, let's start moving forward with this. That's when they got their engineering team. Engineering team is the one that looked at it and said, wait a minute, there's issues with how this was quoted, and the equipment, type of equipment, mechanisms. It's a very complicated system. And they even said this building is actually one of the most complicated they've dealt with in this region. I guess there's a bigger one down in Oregon that's bigger than this, but the Pacific Northwest is a part of it.
That doesn't sound like a good goal of ours.
They just said the size of the building is the largest building for that. So, after talking with their engineering, going back with a couple different proposals on the quotes, I feel confident that this one includes all the parts and pieces necessary to get this system upgraded. For example, one of the pieces we went back and forth on was the lights. So there's lights above you here that kind of light up different colors based on if it's an aid or a medic or an engine. They don't install this type of light system anymore. And so part of one of the proposals, not this one, was to change out the lighting to the new lighting system, which has 5 colors instead of 4. But the cost to swap out these lights with the new 5 light or 5 color was about $10,000. And so after discussing that with Anders Hansen, I did do you need 5 colors or is the 4 adequate? They said, well, we only have the 4 units here, so the 4 colors is adequate. So we decided to save the 10 grand and not change out the lights, because it's actually, you have to run different wires to the lights. So it has 5 pairs in the wire for the 5 colors. So things like that is what we discussed as engineers. The sales guy didn't even bring up things like that, and having it provided. Now it's been reviewed by multiple eyes, including their engineer, their sales, and their service manager. He's the guy in his team, the one that actually goes out to the stations. So we feel confident with this pricing, which is just under 76K.
Yeah. 75.7,
What did we approve last month?
65.
65.
about 10,000. I have the full proposal if you want to read it.
You know what? If nobody else does, I'll take it and read it. Give me some
We
read
felt
it
like
tonight.
we didn't need to print out for everybody.
Right.
Okay, so is there action required on this quote?
I don't know, it was approved at the previous price, maybe at least just a consensus that this is, agreed to as a new pricing.
I have one question for him first, is that timeline doesn't change because of these changes. They're gonna get it in, they're working on it now.
Well, as soon as they get the parts in, some of the parts were delayed until the beginning.
Okay.
But
We've heard that one.
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
The timeline's no different than one.
that's what scares me on a lot of this stuff, that they. And then if it's delayed too long, then they'll want another bump because of labor cost issues. So we want to make sure they're tied down and this gets done. All right.
Okay,
So my consensus is we go with it.
okay. Are you
I
comfortable
would
with that?
agree with that, yeah.
Okay,
I just want to make sure we're being transparent, because of the 10,000, it's not 1,000, it was 10,000.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
all right. Anything else on that item?
We need to sign it.
That would be. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll say that for the.
Okay, and then hopefully everybody out on Zoom can hear, like when Zeb's talking adequately, but please chat or tell us if you cannot hear everybody.
Is Zeb done then? Do
I
we have
think he's
any other
done.
issues for Zeb?
The only other item, I don't know if he wants to stick around, there was an agenda item subsequently where I was gonna highlight some improvements that were made from a technical standpoint.
Oh, and the server.
Which is all the way down on 4.6, but I'll leave that up to Zeb if he wants to stick around or not, otherwise.
I'll be back.
Okay, all right, thanks, Zeb. Okay, so our next item is our new item 4.2, which is approval of revised policy 1400. Everybody received a copy of that in the packet, and we've discussed and done sort of a first reading of that policy. So does anyone have any questions on that policy at this time?
I think we covered it. I like it.
Okay. All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve that policy?
I'll make a motion to approve policy 1400 as it is currently read,
As revised.
as revised. Thank you.
Okay,
And I'll second that.
okay, all in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
I
Okay, the motion carries.
needed to ask for discussion first, though. Before vote,
Oh, yeah, you're right.
but we're good.
Okay,
Just,
okay, item 4.3, update from the subcommittee, administrative activities not covered in the ILA. Did you have any updates on that?
no, that's what we're getting ready to sit down and set a meeting up to do it. That's in this.
And that's actually, I would suggest that that's probably combined with the 4.4, setting a special date that can be combined all into, one meeting. To not only discuss the budget for the overall budget, but also the special, North Shore budget.
Okay,
But we should keep that line item on as we go along.
Okay.
I would agree.
all right, so we'll leave that as an agenda item, a standing item for now. So moving to item 4.4, setting date for a special meeting for public budget hearing. Chief, either you can comment on that, or I emailed Matt Paxton, and I also asked him if he had some. But do you know our required dates, our timeline on that?
Yeah, so I have some suggestions here. I shot some dates over. I was gone last week, and so I didn't hear back on setting the date. I threw out some dates and didn't hear back. So I have a suggestion of looking at, we had already scheduled October 18th. As a special meeting and / public hearing for
20th is on your, is that 18th on yours? Maybe I
18th
don't-
is a Tuesday.
18th.
Oh, I don't have I don't have the revised one.
Okay, sorry. It's the 18th,
Okay,
sorry.
no problem, keep going.
The 18th, and that was gonna be our North Shore Board meeting / public hearing. And what I would suggest is that we don't make that the public hearing, and we have that as our special meeting to discuss the budget and some of these other items. And then we move the public hearing to our regularly scheduled one on November 1st. And which still is, I did these a little bit early, just in case we needed to bump anything. You know, and November 1st is still fine for the public hearing. And then, and still make our deadline by November 30th to have everything finalized into the county. So that would be.
That's your recommendation.
Right, and so, and then I have another suggestion too. Amy, did you have a?
Yeah, so after the public hearing, then the commissioners have to vote to approve the resolutions. Does that require an additional meeting in November?
Right, that's, yeah, and that's exactly where I was going with that. That would need us to put a second meeting in November for the North Shore Board.
A special call meeting then.
So it's gonna create an additional meeting, but I felt like this might give us more, a little bit more or less pressure and more time to make sure that we're, you know, getting everything.
So do we want to set a special, or set a tentative date for that special meeting?
Just-
I would suggest the third Tuesday. That's one that's already been, you know, previously before we canceled the second meetings. of
November 15th.
Yeah,
Just before we establish those dates, let me just check in with our legal counsel and just see if he has any additional advice to offer on dates or timeframes.
Thanks. Yeah, the board has to conduct 2 public hearings around this time, one for the budget and the other for the fire benefit charge. You've traditionally handled those together at the same kind of public hearing, which is acceptable. Those public hearings need to happen before certainly November 30th, which is our deadline to get the budget into the county. And the fire benefit charge public hearing has to occur by November 15th. So if the proposal is to have the public hearings on both of those, sounds like on the November 1st, we will comply with those statutory deadlines. And any additional hearings or meetings after that to make final decisions would be up to you, as long as it's done by the December 30th.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so sounds like we're proposing a special meeting on October 18th for discussion of the budget
yes.
and also this update from the subcommittee. Both public hearings on the budget and the fire benefit charge on November 1st. And then November the 15th, a special fire commission meeting to approve the budget. And then we have a deadline. There's no meeting, but a deadline of November 30th, getting the budget to the county.
Yes.
One thought I have on this is the public hearing where you establish the fire benefit charge has to occur, it says prior to November 15th. So unless you're going to decide on the fire benefit charge on your November 1st hearing, we should probably make that decision prior to the 15th, which.
So should we have the meeting on November 8th? A special meeting on November 8th for the.
I typically have presented at the public hearing, the fire benefit charge rate. And unless there is public, comments or something that would make us reconsider, I usually have that decision at that time as well. Well, we could also keep November 8th as an option, potentially, if you'd like. If, let's say, there's a lot of concern or questions or more thought that needs to be, taken, and making the decision, we could leave November 8th as a possible special meeting. However the board feels comfortable, moving forward.
So get that all kind of jotted down.
Okay, so as I understand it, we'll tentatively plan on November 1st to have the public hearings on the budget and the fire benefit charge. And assuming that those are, there's no significant feedback that results in a significant change to those, we would vote to approve those on the 1st. Right, if we do need to go back and make a change of some sort, then we could have a special meeting on the 8th for that. Okay, does that sound
I
fine?
think
to
that
everybody?
sounds good. And that's, are we covered, Matt?
Yes, that's good.
So we'll, just to dot all the i's, cross the t's, there's a resolution that we need to be prepared
Multiple,
for the November 1st
yes.
meeting. At the-
Well, the public, we should be prepared to make the decision on the fire benefit charge, but the, all of the resolutions, might need a resolution on the fire benefit charge at least on November 1st.
Right.
But the budget, the full budget approval on those resolutions can be on the 15th.
Right, because that's what Matt, you were saying that the fire benefit charge requires a resolution and that has to be done prior to November 15th. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is prior to or is it on?
It says prior to November 15th
Okay.
of each year.
It's
So maybe we
it's off
should,
by 1 day.
so we should
I know.
keep the 8th open and
We should keep the 8th open.
do a special meeting on the 8th to get the resolutions and put. that-
Well, I guess potentially
As
instead of
needed.
November 15th, we could do a not do the November 15th meeting. And just plan on a November 8th meeting.
Yeah.
And because it'll all be done theoretically. And we can just do all the resolutions on November 8th.
That would make more sense.
Let's do that.
Because there's three that we have to do. We have to do the budget, fire benefit charge, and yes, thank you.
So I agree. I think that's what we should do and then tentatively put a schedule together.
I say all this, let me double check. Yeah, I'm good on the.
And that's what I'm checking my calendar too.
Yeah,
That's also
so why don't we,
election day.
Chair, I would just suggest instead of November 15th, we'll move everything to November 8th for full budget approval and the resolutions necessary.
Is that fine with everybody? Okay, and you've got all that, those,
Yeah, so I'll just do.
Captured in the notes.
So October 18th will be a special meeting to discuss the budget and to do an update from the subcommittee. And then on November 1st is our regular meeting. We can also have the public hearing meeting as well during that time on November 1st. And then November 8th will be a special meeting to approve all of the resolutions related to the budget, tax levy, and fire benefit charge.
Correct, except the November 1st meeting will have technically it's two public hearings, one for the budget, one for the fire benefit.
Okay,
And we do have a notice of public hearing form that we've used in the past. So I think Don Killian would be a great person to contact for that form.
is that to do the, sorry.
Yeah.
Is that to do the advertisements? Is that what you're
Right,
referring
The
to?
posting,
Yeah, for the November 1st public hearing, you would advertise it in a similar way you would for a special meeting. But there's a form that we traditionally have used for public hearings.
Oh, okay, so it's not titled a special meeting, it's titled public hearing.
public hearing.
Good point.
Thank you.
I can work with you on that language.
Okay. And I will work with Dawn to get the proper public advertisements put in place.
And Chief, can we, now that we have this, can you revise your,
I'll revise this and send it back.
send it out, please? Thank you.
And actually, I do have one other suggestion change. We had scheduled a joint meeting October 27th. And that was part of the contract to IRA as well. Rick has an initial a draft that it got.
Little bit different.
So I don't know if it's.
It's close. It's pretty
Okay.
close.
And I just found out as I was driving over here that, right before I left actually my office, that October 27th, my board is all at a conference. So we can't do the joint board meeting on that day. And so, and again, I'd like to do a joint meeting so that everybody can get together, and understand, everything that we're doing and all that, and see if there's any questions from either board, and all that. So it would be nice to reschedule that meeting to another day. We've had a lot of meetings. So it's getting kind of full.
Well, the 25th of October is open for me.
Okay. That was my suggestion. That was going to be my
Tuesday, the
suggestion
25th.
again, because it makes it nice to be able to be on those Tuesdays or Thursdays, because those are what we've already, set aside. So if you're all good with that, I will reach out to my board and suggest the October 20th, moving that date to October 25th.
Yeah, I have another meeting at that time. I may be able to reschedule it, or the meeting could just happen without me.
Well, and again, this is just for everybody to get together. We will be having a discussion, on October 18th and November 1st too, where if you had any questions about it, we can discuss it.
Sure,
Okay, thank you.
sure. Okay,
Nice.
yeah, go ahead.
This is a question for Matt, for if there is a joint meeting, is it considered a special meeting for North Shore? Or how is that?
It's gonna be a special meeting for both, because this is outside of the.
Yeah, if it's not the first Tuesday of the month at 5 o'clock, it would be classified as a special meeting.
And it would be hosted at Shoreline?
Yeah, it'd probably be easier to do it at Shoreline.
But it can be recorded.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then if you can, once you revise it, send it to Amy and she'll disperse it to all of us.
I'm sorry, I haven't provided, I sent it out, but I didn't print it out for you, sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, so most important thing. Amy, do you have all the dates clear?
I do.
Okay,
And I'll revise this.
all right.
And
Excellent.
I will create calendar invites in Outlook. for this process as well.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
I still will need to, I'm gonna put October 25th as tentative at this point, because I'm gonna need my board approval that they're good with those dates, or with that date.
Okay, we good to move on to the next.
Yes,
agenda
we
item? Okay. Okay, our next item is item 4.5, 8-car 157, and the chairman Pratt had requested a short presentation on 8157, just an explanation of when it's in service, out of service, number of days it's been in service, calls and transport. So whatever of that you are prepared to comment on would be great.
So, and we can go wherever you want to go as far as this discussion. I did include the statistics in my district activity report. There's been brief one at least. That, we had 80 from August 1st to December, well, early October actually. 82 incidents, 85% of which were EMS related. Average of 2 calls per 12-hour shift. 157 transport 23 times. 151 had 72. In service about 73% of the time, which has been improving as we exited the summer months and the heavy vacation usage. As and I have a couple of sheets here that I wanted to talk about overall staffing, and we can talk about options and so forth. But the short version of this is that we had a discussion about this a couple months ago. I think it was a couple months ago. At that time, I was not going to mandatory people to be on overtime to staff at 157. And so if people were, if we had regular staffing and or overtime to staff it, then yes, we would staff it up, which is why it's not staffed 73% of the time. If we were to do mandatory, theoretically, that'd be 100%. As our staffing levels improve, of course, it'll get staffed up more and more. with regular and or regular overtime. But that probably won't, I mean, we'll continue to see improvement as we get away from the summer months. But really, the next big step improvement will be when this current academy graduates, which would be January. And I'm looking at this at like in different steps. I think once we get to that point in January, when that next academy comes out, my suggestion at that point would be to take the 165 aid car to a 24-hour aid car, and then hire specifically overtime if necessary for 157. And I think at that point we can get it pretty much guaranteed almost 100% without mandatories, or theoretically we should be able to do that, considering that we won't have as much of a staffing shortage. I provided a sheet for you to show you kind of, and I just revised it this afternoon, so if I screwed up anything, it's my fault, because I wanted to give you the most up-to-date version of this. It shows the different staffing levels.
Is that a document that you can share, Amy, for people who are just zooming in? I don't know if you can screen share that for people.
And so this is this indicates what our staffing levels are currently, for assigned staffing, well, not assigned, but at our staffing levels of 25 to 32.
Mhm.
And typically we're in that 27 range, 26 or 27 range. And so when we're at 26, basically we have one extra person on 157. And what we're doing is, we just made a change. And what we're doing is, instead of sending that person home, we're actually utilizing that person as a fourth on engine 164. During my chief's chats and some of my other conversations with staff, we found that having, if somebody came in for overtime and then we're sending people home, that was not, and they get 2 hours of overtime, that is not a good practice. I didn't feel comfortable with that practice, considering that somebody got up early, traveled to come in, and then we're sending them home with 2 hours overtime. It's one thing if you're living in the district, it's another thing if you're traveling from Vancouver or Kittitas or Bellingham or someplace like that. I didn't think that was appropriate or fair. So what we've done is we've changed our priorities, and we basically said it's up to that individual if they want to go home because they do live local, or they have something to do that day anyway and they get 2 hours of overtime, or if they want to stay. And if they want to stay, then the priority, and it's you'd have to look at the different levels to see this, but the priority is engine 164, then ladder 161, and then engine 151 when we have extra people on. And so that's kind of the options at the different staffing levels. Of course, as you move to the right and we have heavier staffing levels, then you start to see 165, and it's not on here because it's not guaranteed at this time. You start to see 165 staffed at 24 hours a day. That is a goal in early January to look at that car as a 24-hour car. One of the questions that was asked was, how busy is 157? It's not super busy. We knew that. We knew it was never going to be a super busy 8 car, but it does relieve pressure and can backfill to 151 when they're doing transports, or when we have back-to-back calls and things of that nature. And again, we were looking at trying to improve overall levels of service. We're not guaranteeing it at 100% because that would require us doing mandatories, to do it. It is improving, again, as we get out of the summer months, but we really won't see significant improvements until we get to January, when we have more staffing. Speaking of, that was the second sheet that I was showing you, which is, this is our current staffing level. Shift staffing assignments. And my point with sharing you with this was to show where our overall staffing levels are. And you'll see a tally at the bottom of each shift, from left to right, A to D shift, 26, 25, 25, and 25. Our goal there is to get to 28 assigned. So that's why we're short. It's 3, 6, 9. We're short 11 spots right now. Did I do that right? I thought we were only short. Yeah, I did do that right. Okay, so we're short 11 spots right now overall. We have 9 in the current academy. We're also looking at a lateral process,
For two,
you know, what's that?
for two lateral.
For 2 or more, depending on if we have, and hopefully not, you know, nobody fails out of our current academy, or I don't have any other surprises, you know, occurring. We are looking at, you know, the 9 that are coming through, potentially a couple more laterals, but also looking in January of 6 entry level firefighters, which will help us address future and forecasted attrition in 2023. Still with me? Okay, so I guess my point with this is to show you that I have some confidence that we will be close to, at, or maybe even strong, you know, with our staffing levels in January for our target. Once we get to the target, then this is computer modeling that I shared with you during our proposal for the contract. You know, that we had targeted 28 per shift, and that's where we thought we should be. But really, we need to get to that level and then reevaluate how our overtime is, and what our staffing levels are, to make a determination if that computer forecasting was accurate or not. If it's not, then we need to look at potentially more, you know, personnel. If it is, then that's great. Then we hit our target, and we're good to go. And then we just have to worry about attrition therein, or increasing staffing levels, or whatever. So, you know, because the computer model, you know, one of the concerns that we have, and I think I've shared this with the board, is that the computer model does not take into effect the impacts of one of the newer programs that's having some significant impacts to our staffing, which is PFML, the Paid Family Medical Leave, which is a new initiative at the state level. And what we're finding is that we're almost averaging like 1 PFML a day, which is not included in our average sick leave or our vacation usage, which is what that computer model used with debit days and everything to give us that estimate. Which is why I caution that we need to get to that level and then really see, you know, if I need to, I could revise the computer model to include that PFML, but we're already on the path of trying to get to that level. So I'd like to stay on that for now. These staffing needs and what we're looking at in January is going to be included in our 2023 budget, you know, to plan for the attrition that's coming in 2023. So we will be front loading a little bit in 2023. We have some attrition that'll happen. Some of it will be one of them will be in January. We have a couple in June, and then we have a couple that are later in the year. So it's going to be spread out throughout the year. So we might be a little heavy to begin with, but by the end of the year, we should be, again, taking care of our known attrition that's going to occur next year.
I have a couple of questions. One is you're talking
Sorry,
about,
just a second.
okay,
Just one announcement, Commissioner Byers has joined the meeting virtually.
Okay, Commissioner Byers, we're on agenda item 4.5.
okay, I had a question. So I heard a comment that you want to take aid 164 to 24 hours
165.
or 165. And
We do staff it at sometimes at 24 now, but it's not guaranteed at 24.
so the only question that comes up in my mind is we want to get 157 staff for day shift or our 12-hour shifts. If we take and jump in and make 165 24 hours, how does that impact overtime to make 157 work? See, to me, we're pushing here and here, and we're gonna pay overtime for both of them, and that's not prudent.
Well, at the time that we're going to look at taking 165 to 24 is the same time we would improve 157 to probably 100% of the time, because the overtime that we are spending right now will decrease on 165, but overall it will probably improve on both 165 and 157. Because we're not guaranteeing 165 in the second 12.
Right.
You know, and when we start doing that, if we don't have improved staffing levels, yes, our overtime would, if we were to guarantee it, we would be looking at increased, you know, overtime for that. But with increased staffing, that'll remove some of that, you know, because we'll have a little over 2 per shift, you know, that'll be coming on. So that basically, that's an 8 car,
Right.
you know, minus, you know, sick leave, vacation stuff.
I agree with you. I just, you know, again, being prudent, we need to make sure we're staffed with regular staffing. And, you know, and try to keep the overtime to a minimum. That's what we're trying to do here. That's what we did.
Right.
North Shore.
Some overtime is prudent. It's the best use because if you staff to a level that you're minimizing or trying to eliminate overtime, is cost prohibitive. It is so high, you just can't do it. It's not a smart way to spend money. But if you're spending $2 million a year on overtime, and that's not prudent either.
Right.
We should be adding more staffing levels to get that down to a manageable level. What that number is, you know, I don't have a specific number. You know, typically I would think anywhere from, you know, for Shoreline, it seemed like a good number with around 600, 700, 800,000 a year.
Mhm.
Maybe we push that to 900, or you know, with the advent or the additional 2 stations, or maybe even $1 million. But we need to get to a place where we feel good about the amount of overtime we're spending. And when we're spending what's uncomfortable, then we need to look at additional staffing. And that's where that PFML impacts, you know, where we really need to see what that real number is once we get to that staffing level.
And has that been in effect, the PFML, has that been in effect for this whole calendar or budget year?
Yes.
So you'll have a pretty good idea.
Well, yeah, and what we're finding is, and some of the usage of the PFML has changed. And
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to get on that soapbox too much, but PFML, the intent of PFML was for businesses and agencies out there that didn't pay for sick leave. Clearly, we already do that. So we were an unintended, you know, consequence of this law that taxes both the employer and the employees to pay for PFML. And the intent was that PFML was to help people, you know, be homesick or for their loved one, or bonding with their newborn child, or adoption. And what, again, I don't want to be too much on a soapbox, but legislatively, they made some big errors in how they not only wrote this and how they applies to organizations like ours, but also on the usage. And instead of taking 3 weeks off in a row, I can tell you like this, and over a 6-month period. And so what it's doing is that, you know, there's the potential of people taking like weekends or holidays or something like that. Some people are taking it in blocks, some people are all over the place. And so it becomes problematic, and it's an overtime increaser, you know, for us. And it needs to be factored into, you know, how we look at future staffing levels, unless they change the BFML.
So we're on a little bit of a tangent right now on
Sorry.
this topic. That's okay.
I just wanted to announce that Commissioner Pratt has joined the meeting.
Great.
So, so I didn't know, I'm sorry that I am going on, these all kind of play, because
Sure.
it talks about aid 157 currently, but it also talks about the future with aid 157 and where that relief will come from. Again, my position right now is that we don't mandatory for aid 157, and that we get to a better staffing level, and then look at bringing it up to 100% with normal overtime and or regular staffing, which will occur sometime in January.
Any other commissioners have any questions? Those who just joined. Essentially, we got a summary of ACAR 157, as well as overall staffing matrix and numbers, and essentially the staffing matrix that we have that shows shift staffing. We're ultimately, looks like we're working on a goal of 28 shift staffing per shift, which would put us at the staffing matrix kind of midpoint indicated on the diagram from the chief, with the anticipation that aid 157 will be staffed a lot higher percentage of the time after the beginning of the year.
Slight nuance to this, 28 assigned,
Right.
which will actually, with debit days and all that, it could be heavier, higher than 28 there. But 28 assigned with the debit day, additional debit days minus the sick leaves and vacation, it should be around that level, you know.
So
you know, but 28 assigned with the computer modeling that we had showed us having an extra percentage of a firefighter every shift with average sick leave and normal vacation.
Okay,
That's what the computer model did. And unfortunately, like I said before, the computer model does not take into effect the PFML. So that might have that impact that we're not accounting for.
okay, thank you for clarifying. Does anybody have any follow-up questions? Commissioner Pratt?
Yeah, I guess just kind of generally, did anything of note come out that wasn't represented or reflected in the statistics noted in Chief Cowan's update?
Did anything come out that was not anticipated?
No, so in your I'm sorry, in your chief's notes, you provided some statistics on frequency that A157 was in service and you know, the number of calls, et cetera, et cetera. Does anything come out in your conversation that I missed that is of note or?
No, not really. You know, we had heavy, the times it was browned out, not surprisingly, was heavier in the summer, but we're starting to see improvements already as we've come out of the summer months. You know, and our staffing levels haven't really changed. It's just the use of vacation that has changed, which has helped us improve not having to brown it out. And then the other piece to this is that through the chief's chats conversations I've had with staff, I was brought aware of, you know, a concern of when we only had one extra overtime on aid 157, and instead of sending that person home, which was a negative not only for that person but for potentially for people to sign up for overtime, because if they were the last ones to sign up, they were the first ones to be sent home. And what was communicated to me was that this is potentially a deterrent for people signing up on overtime. So I'm hoping that this will also improve people signing up for overtime and staffing A157. So I'm expecting this to continue to improve as the word gets out. We only made that change a week and a half ago, you know, after I finished up my chief's chat. So we should get better, but it won't be 100% until we can get to a better staffing level after this next academy graduate.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions on this agenda item? Okay, now we're on to item 4.6, agency integration successes. This is actually an agenda item that I asked to be placed here because in the relatively recent past, I had a couple of different separate instances where people just happened to tell me stories about some changes that had happened at North Shore relatively recently subsequent to the contract for service. And so one of those was on the technical side. And so I don't know if you want to share that diagram. And I don't, Zeb, do you want to talk about this particular item or do you want me to talk about it? It's just gonna highlight some of the changes that had occurred in that, like the server rooms.
So you kind of think about when you have somebody, you know, take your landscaping, you know, it's different if your lawn's already mowed, it's like keep it maintained, as opposed to it's kind of shoveled a little bit, you need to get it to a good state and then maintain. So the server room here was ran by a couple different IT departments before Norcom or before Shoreline took over here. There was a lot of equipment that we had to figure out what it was. We've never seen equipment like this. It was lit up, powered on, and after some investigating, we found it was actually decommissioned 5-6 years ago, but no one ever unplugged it. No one ever actually took it out and disposed of it. So there's actually quite a few things like that in the racks that we found. So these are before pictures back from, this is August of 2021, showing the wiring, showing equipment that was in there. And again, a lot of this stuff we had to figure out what it was doing. Fire stations are not that complicated. So you have a certain set of equipment that runs the business, right? But when you looked at this room, there was like 3 sets of equipment two sets were completely unused and deactivated or should have been deactivated. They were just kind of left. So you'll see the wiring mess that we tried to get back there. We had to step over these cords, trying to not break our ankles getting back there, as well as don't get your hip on those metal bars that are poking you trying to get back there. So there's 3 pictures that are before, and then there's 2 pictures that are as of last week. So as you can see, we got rid of a lot of the equipment. We got rid of all those cords on the floor. So you don't have tripping hazards anymore, nothing poking your hip as you get back there. But this is also reflective of the new equipment we purchased. That we ordered actually last year back in October that finally arrived. And so this is new network equipment, new servers to run the storage, and a new firewall to have a security footprint for the building under a firewall for web protection.
Do we have the new AC running in there yet?
No, the new AC is not in there yet.
So what are you using right now as a?
We'll get to that one.
Do you want me to take that?
I'll let Chief Cowan talk about the air conditioning
No,
for the
I'm
building
sure-
as well as the server. Any questions about it?
No, it's beautiful. You did-
And I feel like that was, I mean, besides the fact that it looks better organized, it's just emblematic of, we had identified a problem that we weren't even really aware that we had in terms of our equipment and our software protection, our firewall and so on. And so that's one thing which has definitely been improved.
Are you, all our parts and pieces are here now?
Yes, all the parts we ordered are here.
And then our door codes, is that getting done so we can use our door codes?
So this building, we can do that, but we're trying to keep it simple where, for example, I can give you guys your own codes, but we're trying to not give the firefighters their own codes until all buildings are online.
Okay,
So currently station 61 is in progress. The guy was there last week, kind of getting started. He'll be there next week, finishing up that. And then in January, we have station 64 and 65 coming online with the new door system. So once all systems are online, we'll give every firefighter a personal code that will work at any facility. But like I said, for you guys, if you guys want your own personal codes now, but then we only work for this building in 57, it wouldn't work at 61 if you have to. So we get that system online.
thank you.
Okay, you can ask the chief about air conditioning during the chief's report. But
No, that's all right.
since,
It sounds like it's being handled as best it can.
okay.
So let's leave it there.
So the other thing that I had heard that prompted me to put this on the agenda was, I heard from a couple of our legacy North Shore employees, just some anecdotal reports about, I just asked, hey, how's it going? And so they told me some stories that highlighted some seeming improvements. And so I thought that those would be something that the other commissioners and just people in general would want to hear. So I asked a couple of people, Chief Hochstein and also Hans Hearn, if they could just offer some comments, just their observations or personal observations from the firefighter and battalion chief level of changes they've seen since this contract for service went in place. So maybe since you're here and you're on duty, maybe you could go first, Chief.
Sure. So as Commissioner Hadman mentioned, he spoke with firefighter Hearn and myself last week and explained kind of what he was thinking about and some of the experiences he's had talking with a few legacy North Shore members. And this is by no means by no means a comprehensive list of kind of some experiences that we're having and things that we're seeing, but they are a few things that we have noticed. Sorry, do you want me to leave? Yeah. I'll make a question one off about you. In no particular order, but we did reach out to members of Legacy North Shore to try and get a current. Hans and I reached out to some Legacy North Shore people to try and get a little bit of feedback. We only got a few things, so I would start off by a program that I've been working on, the jet ski program and the rescue swimmer program. Since we've been a combined agency, we've now grown to a 35-member rescue swimmer team, which is pretty powerful in a combined department, I would say, for what we're able to do out on the lake and with the jet skis. Since those jet skis have come in service, and since we've become a combined department, we've had 8 responses out on the lake, where I believe that we would have had we've made a difference out on the water. So That's pretty powerful to go from, our group of people here at North Shore to a larger combined department, where we see a benefit working together. And that does translate to all the specialty teams, I would say, not just rescue team, but all the technical rescue teams and what they're doing. So all working together, learning from each other, and being able to respond on calls together. So I think that's a huge benefit. Boost all those teams. It was great to see Zeb's presentation about the computer room and the server room. And I would say as a whole across the building, it feels like facility repairs and maintenance seem to be happening on a more timely schedule when things come up. Old North Shore style was to put a problem tracker in place, and the BC in charge of that stuff would get to it when that person was on shift. And now we have a dedicated person that is able to come and take care of repairs and maintenance on a daily schedule. So I think that things are happening on a more timely. It's my impression that things are happening more quickly when we identify things that are not working properly. It feels from talking to a few people on the Bay floor, it does feel like communication from as a department has improved quite a bit. We've gotten a lot of information from HR about our benefits, from the fire marshal's division about buildings. We get emails constantly about this issue. This big building over at Shoreline, or this building here in Lake Forest Park, or what have you, and things that are going on where there's trouble and when it's been resolved. And that makes a big difference for us out on the street, for being able to feel like we're rolling into a building, especially one that we know has some issues, and know what some of the ongoing things are. What's taking place there can be helpful. That can be helpful information for us. Also operations, right? So we get a lot of communication from the ops side about things happening with 8157 or transports or whatever it might be. And I feel like people are doing a good job across the organization communicating that stuff, and that's helpful as we combine, but also just as a whole, as a practice for Native. So that's been a benefit. Shoreline Fire Department has been extremely accommodating to us as new employees coming into Shoreline. I feel like there has been a huge effort to make sure that we, as former North Shore employees, understand what as we fall under their contract and their benefits, what that means to us. We've had some changes in how vacation is managed. That's been a big one. And Chief Cowan and Katie Dahl. Katie actually was over here last week and met with every firefighter for 4 days in a row, working through making sure everyone was aware of where we're at with our vacation banks, where we are at with all that time off, and making sure everybody understood what we needed to do. We needed to transfer some of that to next year, use it this year, cash it out, or whatever it might be. And it took a complicated situation, and they dedicated some person hours to helping make sure we as North Shore people had a good understanding. So that's important. The mechanics at Shoreline have been very responsive and knowledgeable. We've had a good relationship with NUD, and we continue to do that. But I would say that the Shoreline mechanics are equally, if not more so, responsive to what we need and caring for our fleet. When Hans and I requested some people to give us some feedback, there was people that mentioned that they really have appreciated the opportunity to work in some diverse areas of North King County. And diverse, I would say maybe Aurora, it brings a different situation, a different type of calls than maybe Lake Forest Park, but it is a variety that some people enjoy, and that's a good thing. Also, just the opportunity for personal advancement within an organization that's bigger is more present, and there's a lot of directions a person can go, and I think people are already starting to see where those opportunities lie. Whereas when we were a smaller department, maybe that wasn't quite so. Next week, as I'm sure Chief Cowan has mentioned, we've got a leadership retreat. Some of us are going to, and I'm excited to attend that. I think, you know, we'll be able to, things that are not on this list, if we feel like we need to work towards, that's going to be an opportunity to bring some of those up. And I think that that is just in and of itself something that we didn't used to always have. It's been a long time since I've even been on a retreat where the focus is the health of the organization. And I think that'll be a benefit to the department. So, and last but not least, I know there's a lot of discussion about how many BCs and what kind of model we want to have with that. But I would say just for 2022, it's been a huge benefit to keep the 2 BC model and work together as a shoreline and a North Shore BC as we try and get up to speed on everything, understand what the expectations are, and be able to back each other up on a regular basis has been a huge benefit. So I know we're going to be talking about that next week at the retreat as well. So I'm open to any questions there, or happy to hand it off to Hans, who I know had a few more items.
Sure, do we want to let Hans, Firefighter Hearn, offer his insights?
Howdy, everybody. Hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, obviously I agree 100% with everything Chief Hochstein just presented. And we had some overlap, so I'll just briefly reiterate a couple of his points and a couple of things that other people have reached out to me with. So I had a couple of firefighters talk about how responsive HR has been, and that's been really nice change. Benefits package is great. People want me to let you guys know that. Big thing is training and operating with other crews from Shoreline Fire Department. We've got more opportunities to train on other people, on other engines and in other districts. We're often working in each other's districts, even in the past. But now there's a little bit more focused training on getting to know our neighboring districts, as well as the equipment that we might be pulling hose off of, which I think has been beneficial for both districts. As Chief Hochstein said, there's been new career paths that have opened up for maybe the ladder truck or wildland firefighting. Again, we're teaming more cohesively with technical rescue response and water rescue response. And that goes all the way down to our own Rescue 151 and based out of Kenmore, which has new tools from both the UASI and from Rescue 161. So we're better equipped to respond to big technical emergencies than we were just a few months ago. But what I was talking to Commissioner Admin about, I think it was last week, was just how I feel like our EMS program has really improved since we started transporting all of or most of our patients. Just a couple of bullet points real quick. The continuity of care is great. So instead of handing our patients off to an ambulance company or whatnot, we are taking those patients to the hospital ourselves. There's a little bit less loss in translation when you do that because we're the first people to see the patient. And then when we hand off to the doctors at the ER, there's a little bit less loss in translation there. Another thing that I kind of didn't really expect is that we're getting to a decision point a lot sooner during our calls and maybe making a harder decision than we were before. So before, we were doing the sick or not sick thing, which is basically whether we think a call needs paramedics. But now, aside from that, if we're dealing with patients that are having an emergency or maybe just think they're having an emergency, we get going to the hospital quicker than we could before, or we have an opportunity to kind of sit there and talk with the patient and try to convince them that maybe your call doesn't warrant a visit to the ER. And so that's been kind of a benefit for both the district and the EMTs and the patients. And the final thing I just wanted to touch on was that I think the most beneficial thing for me as an EMT has been getting that feedback from the hospital. So before, when we would send a patient to the hospital via AMR, we would never hear back from the hospital as to what happened with the patient. Now, when we hand off a patient to the hospital, to the ER, we're getting feedback sometimes a day or two later, but we are getting feedback from the hospital as to ultimately what was wrong with that patient. Like, we can take an educated guess in the 15 minutes that we're with the patient, but obviously that's a pretty limited time frame to try to figure out what's going on. So it's been really great to kind of see, oh yeah, we made the correct decision here, or oh yeah, we could do this better, a little bit better next time. And so that's been really instrumental in developing our EMT program, in my opinion. So if you guys have any questions, that's great. If not, I'll just say goodbye and good night.
Thanks, Hans. Anybody have any questions or?
This
Okay.
is amazing to hear, though. That makes me really happy.
Yeah, when
Because we weren't carrying any of that follow-up, so for me, it's great to hear the feedback. Because that's what we're hoping for, but it's nice to see it come to fruition.
I would add too that I finished up my Chiefs chats not last week, the week before on that Friday. And one of the questions I asked, now, sometimes I don't get the real truth, and all that, but I try to meet with all the stations and crews at a small level so that it's more intimate, so people feel more welcoming for, voicing any concerns and all that. And I feel like most of the time I'm getting it pretty bluntly. And one of the questions I asked, I try to go with a minimal amount of agenda, so I don't have to talk as much. I end up talking a lot, just because there's lots of questions and so I'm answering them. But one of the questions I asked was, how's it going with integration? Is there any concerns at the street level that is not rising to me or to the executive team that we need to address? Please give me some feedback. And overall, it was everything's like, it's going great, there were a couple of little things like, adding, some computers into the 80 or to 57 and 51 bays and stuff like that. But I mean, it was really pretty, really smooth. And I was kind of excited to hear it all, which I thought I'd share with you. And either they're not telling me or everything really is going fairly well. So, I guess we'll see, as we continue on with this, but it feels like it's been going for more than just a few months, but it's really only been a few months. So it's kind of exciting to see that I'm still dealing with a lot of little fires, but that they kind of well, maybe not expected, but I knew that there'd be a ton of little things that we weren't thinking about, but nothing that's a deal killer. I mean, like Matt was saying, one of the bigger issues I had to deal with administratively was blending the vacation, usage and accrual and all that. So I just want to share that with you a little bit.
Okay, thanks. All right, well, thank you guys for sharing that. I just thought it was, nice to have a chance to hear some of the successes.
Oh, thanks. It's always good to think about the positives. So.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is item 5, board resolutions. We don't have anything under that. So we're on to item 6, consent agenda.
Make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda is approved. Item 7, reports. 7.1, fire chief report. The fire chief provided his report in written form. And I don't know if anybody have any questions on the fire chief report.
We talked
Really
about
busy.
150, 157 was one of my questions.
Yeah.
And we had a very good discussion on that, so. And can you keep that in your report every month? That would be.
Yeah, I can give you monthly updates.
Any commissioners on Zoom have any questions on the fire chief report? Chief Commissioner Pratt?
Yeah, thanks. I just, a couple questions. Noticed that you had a meeting where you were discussing the status of the vaccine mandate and the potential for employees returning. And I was just wondering if there's anything new there that you can talk about in an open public meeting?
Sure. So I had a meeting, it's now a couple weeks ago, with county leadership and Seattle's chief and a chief from South County. And talking with them about the impacts of the governor's decision, what was that going, if it was going to change, or what it was going to change with the vaccine mandate at the King County level. Because again, it's a state level, issue, but we're focusing on the King County impacts. And we stated some of our opinions and perspectives on it. I need to be careful a little bit. So they were going to go back to the county and talk about some of the legal impacts, and what the county stance was going to be, and they were going to circle back to, because I was representing North King County, myself and a couple others, with any updates, maybe in another meeting, or at least in an email process. Since then, and so there was no decision made at that meeting. And then, over the last couple of weeks, there's been some discussion. There's one fire, and actually there's 3 departments that have stated, at least at this point, that as of October 31st, that they're going to end the vaccine mandate. King County has not come out with a final decision about subcontractors, which has impact for us as an ALS department. So I'm kind of waiting to find out, what King County's decision is before I put out an email. So I'd like to be able to address both the suppression and our ALS personnel all in one email and one decision about what we're going to do. And I have not made that decision yet. I'm waiting for the county to come back with their decision first, because that potentially has impacts, depending on what they say. I think that's probably all I should say at this point.
Sure, understood. Yeah, I think that's it. I had a couple other questions, but it's not important.
Okay, any other questions on the fire chief report? Okay, are there any commissioner reports? No commissioner reports. Legal counsel, do you have a report?
Yeah, just briefly, it appears that you're all aware, but on September 8th, the governor decided to lift the emergency orders and state of emergency effective October 31st. The chiefs talked a little bit about the impacts on the vaccine mandate. The state's no longer going to be requiring it, but employers do still have the option to keep it in place. And it sounds like the chief is going through that process of deciding those issues currently. One kind of thing that's still out there that you might consider is that in March of 2020, the board passed a resolution declaring a state of emergency for the district based on COVID. It might be time for you to revisit that. Now that the governor has decided that it's no longer a state emergency, it might be different here on the local level, but I wanted to raise that to your attention.
We should.
One thing that I would add is I am expecting, hopefully this week or maybe next week at the latest, that we will have some information back from the county on this. So I think Matt has a good point that we should I think we need to roll all of this together and either clean up the resolution and or make decisions moving forward, and that probably can all be done at the same time.
Should we put that on our agenda for next month?
I would definitely put this on the agenda. Especially since actually we do have some special meetings coming up. I was gonna say it's a month from now, but it's really not. We can add that to the agenda on,
18th.
yes,
And the title is vaccine mandate and.
vaccine mandate update. And,
What do we have, emergency
an emergency
resolution?
declaration impacts or something to that effect. And I'll have to, I'm not familiar with that resolution, so I'll have to find, or Matt, maybe you can send it to me. That resolution to take a look at it, it may be. Again, I haven't seen it, so it may be going away entirely, or it may need to get modified depending on what's decided.
I can send it to you.
Or
It's on our website. but I'll
Okay.
just send it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any additional report, legal counsel?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to item 8, upcoming board agendas. So our upcoming meeting is currently scheduled for October 18th. We have a special meeting scheduled. And I believe we have a budget presentation and discussion on that meeting. And we have vaccine mandate and COVID emergency resolution discussion. And what other items do we need to have on that? Do we want to have the standing agenda items, or you want to save that to the next regular meeting? Like,
Say that for the-
okay,
Yeah, because the rest of this might take some time. So-
Okay.
Those two are gonna be big.
okay.
For that October 18th, did you want a separate line item for an update from the subcommittee?
Did you want to keep that on that October 18th meeting?
On the subcommittee for, no, that doesn't need to be on for that special meeting. I'll just go to the next regular meeting.
'Cause
Just what comes out of the 18th meeting will fill into what we're doing.
Right. So with, just a reminder, with the special meeting, once that agenda is set, we can't change it on the day.
Right.
So I will create a draft agenda and make sure it's,
Perfect, send it to me and make sure. Because
Yeah.
Yeah, I would assume, there's certain standing items that we'll probably have. But just under discussion and action items, I would say it would just be the vaccine mandate, the COVID emergency resolution, and the budget presentation and discussion.
Except I would add that there's two pieces to that. I'm hoping that I'll be prepared. That will be both on the overall budget, but also the North Shore.
Yeah, we should make a statement.
So I would have it as, and that
Two-
probably needs to be two separate line items,
So then
because they're gonna be two separate budgets
two different discussions. So
and two separate, like, so the public hearing. Will be for, the North Shore public hearing will be on the North Shore budget. The shoreline public hearing will be on the overall budget. That makes sense?
Yep.
Sure, but the North Shore budget, we have the dollars that have to go to shoreline, but we have
Correct.
also the other
the other items. yes.
items. Okay,
Right, right. And
okay,
you'll have all that information, but it's separate.
okay. Any other agenda items that we need to include for the October 18th meeting? Okay, I don't see anyone adding any additional items. Okay, is there any other business we need to be back this evening? Okay, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Good meeting. Zeb, thank you. That server room is beautiful. I wish